Can you hear me?
I've never had a microphone. I talk really loudly normally.
But I need to have the sound clear on the video. So I'm gonna have to fold a little
Yeah, go for it. Should I take this off?
Oh,
Punch yourself.
Awkward.
Right.
Yeah, this is our first one we've done. Can you tell?
Or I can put it on the necklace.
So yeah,
I
so
could put the necklace back on. You could. No?
Very convenient.
It's fine.
Because it scratches.
Okay.
it's nice to see so many people here.
Yeah.
This is weird speaking into a microphone as well. It's not too loud or anything. So yeah, thank you all for coming to Red Badger's inaugural UXD exchange meetup. Hello, welcome. There's some seats here. Yeah, 2 seats.
Hi.
So
Does that work? It's really loud.
So the reason we've put a meetup on is because we thought there was a gap for a meetup that actually talked about practical UXD in the wild, we've kind of called it. So actually, we're Red Badger Tech Consultancy, we're full service. So we work with quite big clients offering full service UX design technology. And we tend to do it on site with clients as well. So we do a lot of consulting. So we work with a lot of people, a lot of designers and technology people, developers, to help coach them into just to improve their ways of working. And from a UX and design standpoint, we've got loads of stories that we've learned and picked up along the way that we thought might be worth sharing with the wider community. So it's not going to be Red Badger talking every single one of these meetups, but we will be looking for speakers that want to share their own experiences. So if you're keen at speaking, you want to give speaking a try at one of these events and you're in UXD, do please let us know. What else? Oh, we're hiring. What else? Thank you to Skills Matter Code Node for this amazing venue. And for support and AV and everyone. And also thank you to Amy, Becca and Natalie and the rest of the queue for actually making it a reality and for organising pizza. Enjoy pizza. There's loads of it. There normally is always too much. And beer as well, beer and wine and drinks. It's all free, very, very generous. So on with the show. Anything else? I think that was it. Okay, on with the show. So we've got 3 great speakers. We've got Claire, who's going to talk about the importance of working on a project, designing something for the end product, for an end working product. Okay, it's going to be about outcome-driven design, not about output. So that's going to be the first one. Then we're going to hear from Jason, who's going to talk about user story mapping. So if you're not sure what user story mapping is, you will do after tonight. And then we have Andreas, who's going to talk all about and share some horror stories about issues at work and how we all can overcome them. And it's going to be very, very interactive, hopefully, workshop. So, you know, cozy up, make sure you feel comfortable with each other, because by the end of this session, hopefully we'll all be sharing horror stories and we'll all be trying to make our ways of working better for each other and sharing those stories. I think that's
cool. I've got this. I'm mic'd up. Hi. It's good to see you all. I'm glad all the chairs are full. There was a point earlier where I didn't realize they were keeping you outside, and I thought that there was no one here. So it's good that that's not true. My name's Claire Murray. I'm a digital designer at Red Badger. It's February, apparently. I'm going to talk today about I want to share some kind of personal experiences, which is sort of an excuse for me whining so that no one feels offended. Okay. Anything we can do about echoing sound? Speak quietly. Should I move it down? It's because I'm saying everything twice. It's really important. How is this any better? Still the same? Am I standing there as speaker? Should I come over here? My words are really tiny. I can't really move very far away. All right. So hopefully that's not too distracting for you. So I'm going to talk about some personal experiences about my breakup with design and prototype files. I am still a designer. I still do make these files, but I just wanted to share some examples of my journey. My background's in traditional graphic design. I did graphic design at university, and I've worked for mostly small agencies and for, happy birthday, person over there. And my move into digital work kind of came naturally when the agencies I was working for just got more and more digital projects. And so I've worked in lots of waterfall situations as well as in the more agile way we work at Red Badger. So I've been with Red Badger for 9 months now, and quite recently in a large corporate environment, one client asked me this. They said, what are you doing all day? I don't understand where all your time is going because I can't see the output to justify your existence on the shared drive that we have. So that was essentially translates as, why haven't you made enough Photoshop and design files? Where's all your work? So this struck me at the time of the conversation, it struck me as such a fundamental misunderstanding of where the value of designers should be placed. But after a few days later, having looked back at some of the design work, or trying to work out what he was talking about, I realized that maybe that's a valuable question that somebody in my past life might have asked quite reasonably, because there probably wasn't a huge amount of stuff on the shared drive. And so I thought that might be a really good topic of conversation, is to just chart a bit of an evolution of how I got to be so incredulous that I'd done a really small amount of work, of physical work, apparently, according to him. And yeah, I thought that was appropriate. So I think that's a good topic. So today I'm going to talk about why these processes that we work in design should always contribute to working software. How an understanding of engineering, especially front-end engineering, is really fundamental, I think, to getting your design vision into code. And also why working across the whole product is really essential. So as I mentioned, we work in cross-functional teams at Red Badger. So we work with a whole set of disciplines on a project at the same time to make sure that we're talking to everybody. So that's clients, UX and design teams, software engineers, testers, project managers. And fundamentally, we work together to deliver value to real users as quickly as possible. So that's the same for UX and design. So our joint team purpose is to work on things that matter, the end things that matter. So did more people buy your stuff? Did you save more lives or sell more ice cream? And so your final deliverable is always working software that drives results. And so my point today is get invested in that working software and not in your work in progress design files. So fundamental one, respect your final outcome is built in code, which is, not that surprising really. But I've seen countless portfolios from designers with beautiful specced out visuals because, the engineers ruined it. And so many cries of, but this is what I gave you. Why isn't it the same? And it's because it's not the same. Traditional design tools were never, well, they're obviously getting a lot better, but they were never built to handle the complexity of software. Like typography adheres to a totally different set of rules. Prototyping tools can give you a great indication of flow, but they can't tell you how long your API is going to take to respond, or how the CSS animation you want to use will affect performance. And so to produce a good outcome, we need to make sure we understand the fundamentals of how you execute in the medium. And we need to get working features in this medium as soon as we can. So this isn't a new idea. I didn't come up with this idea myself. And I think there's obviously lots of faces and people that are practicing prototyping in code and doing things as quickly and as agile as possible. I think GDS is a great example, the government digital services. And they do loads of code prototyping, and they use lots of shared ways of working. And sorry, for some reason my notes are really small on this slide. And that allows their UX and design team to prototype in code and work with the real UI. And I think this is amazing, and I think it's a fantastic tool and a fantastic way of working. But it's also fundamentally set up for the organization that they are. It's very large. They have a lot of tools. They have a lot of code snippets. It's a huge infrastructure that allows them to leverage this power. And it's been built for a very specific purpose. I think that can be quite intimidating if your project or your situation doesn't warrant such a setup, and if you're just looking for somewhere to start as a designer. So fundamental 2 is make sure that the tools you're using work for you and that you're using the right tools. So learn about the fundamentals of front end and make sure that that understanding is reflected. So typography is one of my favorite ones because this is the one that excuse me, too much cola, struck me most when I first started. So obviously typographic fundamentals from a learning point of view are based on letterpress, based on actual little pieces of lead that used to go in between movable type. So when you take that into Photoshop, which is the second example, or other design tools, that's kind of roughly, so the larger gray area is your entire letter form height, and then the small gray is the leading. So that's like roughly reflected when you get into Photoshop. When you move that into CSS, your line height is entirely calculated differently. It appears in a different point in your typographic element. Typographic elements render differently across different browsers. Sometimes they look amazing, sometimes they look totally awful. Sometimes if you change the size, they look better in the same browser. Different like artistic effects, most of these tools were built for artworking or photo editing. I worked on a really beautiful website project once where we got to the end of all of the upfront design work and realized that one of the designers had relied entirely on multiply, which at the time was pretty unfeasible from a front end perspective. And so we'd sold the whole vision into the client based on something that was fundamentally pretty unfeasible. Such a shame it's all squished. One of my other recent favorite ones was going through a really, really long and laborious testing report that made huge comments about how important it was that the tappable areas were of a certain size and that the ones we were looking at weren't performing effectively. And then I got to the end of the report and realized that the report was based on an actual prototype and not on anything that anyone had built. So we need to stop perfecting visuals and experiences in mediums that are just poor imitations. I'm not saying throw them away, but I just want everyone to stop and think about how appropriate they really are and how much, when you kind of dig into it, they are fundamentally mismatched in many ways. They should be treated with caution, and we should decide where their use is best placed. So consider carefully where drawing or prototyping tools can credibly and quickly add value to the working software and where they just kind of get in your way a bit. So be really clear with the problem we're trying to solve. What's the quickest way to the answer? Like, will this work in a responsive layout? Are you going to spend 5 days drawing out your whole application in 8 different viewport sizes? Or are we going to kind of have a think about how we might be clever about getting that into code quickly and testing it? It's an infinitely, if you're working on something that's completely fluid, it's basically an infinitely variable product. Trying to visualize that in a static medium is difficult to get your head around sometimes, and also not very fast. Paper prototyping, I think if your fundamental question is, will users understand this question flow? Will they get comprehension of what we're asking them? Then that doesn't need to be in anything other than on a bit of paper that lays out your order. Do users notice our error messaging convention? Maybe that's something that we do need to get into a more hi-fi visual. And so you don't need everything for everything, and a complete set of files and prototypes will almost always include waste, whether that's wasted meetings, to having the discussion the first time, to re-having a discussion when you get to build it, working up 6 different viewports, or even just missed validation opportunities for spending so long in design that your actual product doesn't ship for another 2 months. And even if you've managed to consider all these fundamental things like API responses and how you're going to get all of that content to a user in an appropriate way, if you've worked up everything end to end in a prototype, then you've actually wasted the most time, because you should have just gotten all of that information into code the first time around. So I guess fundamental 4, the perils of overinvesting, which I think hopefully people will be able to sympathize with. One of my favorite ones is mismanaged stakeholder expectations. So the problem with a complete UI is that it looks like so much more of a full solution than it really is. So I kind of really wanted like a Western, with like the bits the houses fall down. And so especially to less trained eyes, you get something that looks fantastic, because it always looks fantastic, because that's our job. And they think, great, well, we just got to build it now. And it's just such a fundamental misrepresentation of the work that's actually been undertaken. And then also, once you've done all of that work and they start building it, you guys start rubbing your hands together and go, great, okay, so we can start on the next version. And before you know it, you're on like MVP 7, and you're going to be so far away from the actual reality of the product by that point. And you're working on new features before even validating the original ones. It's also doing yourself a disservice, because you're working on such a disproportionate amount of the project, and it's such a small pie section that you don't, if you're working on the visual layer only, you don't give yourself an opportunity to think about the depth of the problem at hand. And also applying such a broad spectrum view to all of the product, rather than drilling deep into the real specificity of a specific feature. Okay, so complaint loads. What now? I think get invested in all aspects of the product. Work collaboratively across the whole team, and solve project challenges together. UX design is not a single stage, and you should be able to bring design thinking to all parts of the product. So does this feature help us add value? Are we asking the right questions? Could we solve the problem in a different way? Why do 30% of our people drop off at this point? So like, you can get involved in planning and strategy. Can we see the sample API responses? How long is it really going to be? We've got a beautiful design with 4 words in it, and then someone comes back and goes, oh, no, legal need to put 80 different sentences in there. How many people fill the section out? You can make friends with engineers, they're people too, and get a complete picture of requirements, gather some data. What accessibility considerations are there? What does the tab order look like? Can we listen to the whole thing on a screen reader? What does that even sound like? How do we solve business problems in a way that's inclusive? And then you can take this shared understanding and proliferate it across the team and help everyone else do your job for you or with you. So spend time delivering and developing patterns that leverage the power of code. The beauty of that is everything, you can write a spacing rule once and it can be rolled out across everything, and you've only had to do one instance of it. And then you can bring the learning of what that rule and the fundamental reasons behind that rule to the engineers and get them to also championing that that point, I guess. So if you explain to them what the intent behind the decision is, they can help you support that decision in the future. Swap documentation for conversation. I think even if you've done your due diligence and learned all of the limits of what you can do in front end, and then create a fantastically detailed markup that details all of these different features, if you put that in front of anybody who hasn't been involved in the process, it's very unlikely that that's going to be adopted well. Make testing and feedback visible to everyone. Everybody wants the product to succeed. You can share the routes of discovery with the entire team. And anyone who will listen, for that matter. So drawing programs are a really physical and obvious output of UX and design effort, but it's really not where you can add the most value. I think ultimately a good user experience and design team will probably ask too many questions. They'll bug everybody else, or they should, and focus on the actual outcome of the product that you're working on rather than the output that you physically create. So stop blissfully filling all of your shared drives with a million different design files that you've organized very well, categorically solved every problem in, and respect your final outcomes in code, and build things with that knowledge, design things with that knowledge, get the right tools for the right job at the right time, and save your perfection for sitting down next to engineers or with engineers and working in code. Get invested in all parts of the product and try and share all your understanding with everyone in the team. Thanks. Do you get to grill me now? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I'd like a couple of questions, if anyone's got any questions for Claire. But it is Jason up next, so yeah.
Thank you for letting me go first, Jason.
So Claire, I've got a question.
Oh no, yeah.
So it's all well and good. Obviously, you know, we've worked together, right? So
yes.
But I still struggle with what happens when you've got somebody who maybe on the client side who is very, very wedded to the flats and the prototypes, and you know instinctively that there's a lot of waste there.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I think that's a really tricky one, because you have to either demonstrate that there is waste, which fundamentally shows that person up, which you don't really want to do. I think ultimately you just have to try and take them on the journey and educate with examples. So demonstrate where making some flats and working on some problems in a visual way is useful. Quickly show them the results of that in engineering and in code, and explain the differences as you see them, as they come up, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
So not all designers can code.
No.
And not all teams have coders or front-end people to create production-ready productions. Maybe there's a production team off-site or overseas, etc. What do you do in that case?
You have to work a bit harder, I think, and I think you have to do more work to prepare for that, which I guess if there was an ideal situation, I think you would try and alleviate that by bringing the design and engineering team as close as possible. So I guess anything that would bring them closer. I would suggest starting with a simpler set of features, or maybe one or two things in design, and just encouraging those conversations. I don't know if that's much more difficult over a digital, over Skype or over anything other than being in the same room. But ultimately learning by doing, so road testing the relationship and trying to keep it as cyclical as possible, however that might be, rather than siloing the two processes and having a set of, if you have to split them and they can't be in the same place or they can't work at the same time, try and keep that cycle as short as possible so that they can be learning.
Cool.
Does that help?
Hello.
Hi.
Are there things possibly that the prototyping software like InVision, for example, might be able to do in the future that would help with this?
Yeah, I think I've gloriously ignored a lot of the advances in in Sketch and InVision, and stuff is catching up really, really quickly, and I think that's fantastic. And I think, terrifyingly, the problem is going to go away because the designers and UXers coming up behind us, our heels, are going to not have suffered this problem. And so I think there are some really good things. Sketch has that responsive plugin now where you can add stuff in at a certain size and visualize how it works across different viewports. And Sketch has a much better set of tools which are much more comparable to front-end UI. I don't. If you want specific examples, I guess they need to just be much more representative of how the elements are represented in code. So even annoyingly, even Sketch doesn't accurately represent line height. And I think that's such a missed opportunity for them, because they're so close to that being right. So I think anything that brings them closer, is that specific enough?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. I just wanted to see if you think that actually what a role of designer and kind of what is required to be a good designer is changing in your eyes. So before it could have been just like, you know, you're really good at delivering PSDs.
Yeah.
Do you think that's changing? And what is it changing to?
Yeah, no, I totally think so. And I think it's much more about designing whole journeys and whole experiences rather than I honestly think that somebody who makes stuff look good and a really good designer are two totally different things, because I guess you could argue it's more of a brand if you should do more of a brand kind of, or I think I'd isolate that to products and software. Maybe they are product designers and maybe traditional designers, I guess, might be quite different. But I think it's definitely evolving, and I think that those that kind of aren't doing more to think holistically about problem solving in whatever medium that is are doing a different job. I don't think we have enough labels yet. We have far too many labels, actually. So I don't have that answer. Thanks, Monica.
Cool. Anyone else? Okay, cool.
Oh, well, thanks so much for listening. I've never had a microphone.
So next up, please welcome Jason. After Jason, we'll have a quick break, so you'll be able to go and get more drinks from the bar before setting up for the final workshop with Andreas.
But first get the project first.
Sometimes it takes some time to go from one computer to the. There we go. Sweet. Right. Now let me just.
And now you can change the Hangouts.
Can I?
Well.
Okay, I've done Hangouts. So it's on. Do you need? Oh, you want me to share screen? Don't you?
Yeah. It's a green button on that. You probably need to pick an application.
Cool. That one. Cool.
Let's try out.
Let me check. Let me make you up. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And if you can clip instead of putting it in your pocket, if you can actually just hold it. Clip it. Actually.
Oh, clip it.
Sometimes you put it inside and it breaks.
Okay.
Some test.
Yeah. Hello. Check. 1 2 1 1 2. Check. Okay. Yeah. Hello. Okay. Hey. All right. You ready? We'll do that again. Hello. Hello. Excellent. Fantastic. Wow. This is awesome. Thank you for all coming. Thanks to Joe and the team at Red Badger for organizing this. Very, very pleased to be here and talking. So that's awesome. So hello, let me tell you a story about myself. Yeah. I don't have a clicker thing, so I'm going to press buttons on my laptop. Well, I'm from Australia originally. That's where I was born. I was born in a place called Adelaide. You may have heard it's called Radelaide. That was a bit of a branding thing. And I went to a place in Adelaide called Adelaide University where I studied architecture. And after doing that, I sold some apples. I worked in a campus Apple store where I had access to the internet, and I learned HTML. And at the time, I had a record label which I set up called Popgun. And I built a website about it, and it was all very exciting. And after a bit of time, I decided to leave Australia and come to London via America because I was doing music and I was playing in bands. And yes, I was doing the music. That's me with hair. And then I had design background, which went into UI, web design. And then I went into UX. And then I've gone into service design. So I run my own company, Popgun. Ah, awesome. Look at this. The man. Continue.
Yeah, don't bother with
All
that.
right.
It should work, yeah.
All right, here we go. What does it say? Shift. The one to the shift key. I don't even know which one's the shift key. There we go. Let's skip. Done. Ah, look at that. Awesome. I have a clicker thing. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you. Okay. So, I have my own design agency consultancy called Popgun from my record label. And I've worked with lots of small, big companies, startups, so forth, Telegraph. I'm currently with the Ministry of Justice designing services for them. So, is this going to work? No? Ah, don't worry. I'll just use my finger. So, stories. That was my story. Stories are amazing. They carry a lot of emotions, yeah? They're memorable. I'm hoping I've just given you a very short snippet of my story. I'm sure there's probably one thing or maybe two that you remember, and you might be able to share it because you can remember stories. And because they're shareable, you can collaborate. They're collaborative, yeah? Stories move around the world. They, amazing. And in my story, I referenced a few maps, places, and maps are pretty brilliant as well. And not only do maps help tell stories, but they also tell present states and future states and past states, but they can also embed a lot of information. So there's another extra layer to maps. So, some famous maps is one from Lord of the Rings. Some would say this is very much where we're at the moment in the current climate in Mordor. There's Grayson Perry. I don't know if anyone's seen this. This is an amazing piece of art by Grayson Perry. He did this map of days about himself and his emotions and states of how he's feeling. And he's worked with a cartographer and his characters. And it's just dense. It's amazing. Worth seeing if you can find it. Ah, brilliant. And hey, thank you. Tube map, everyone's, if you want to get somewhere, this is a pretty amazing piece of design. It's classic. And then there's obviously, well, let's just move on a little bit. Shall we just move on? So maps and stories, fantastic. Jeff Patton, he's an agile guy, as in agile with a big A, and a developer, came from a development background. He's into building products. He wrote this book. It's awesome. And there were two big things that came out of that book for me. Was that it's about facilitating conversations. Building user story maps or story maps is about facilitating these conversations to achieve a shared understanding. And as Claire is saying, that it's this shared understanding that you want to build in a product team or a design team, not only just within those teams, but with stakeholders and business and all the people that are involved with it. So I'm sure we've all been in this situation at the top here where we're having a meeting. I'm a designer, I'm a business analyst, I'm someone who's created a whole bunch of user stories. I just give them to you, yeah, come on, go and build that, so there's a big wodge of requirements, or here's a nice wireframe deck for you to have a look at. Well, in my experience, no one bothers to read these things properly. Or if they do, you get this situation up the top left-hand corner where everyone's got a different kind of take on it. And then they build the thing and it's like, oh, hell, oh, God. And then after chatting, hello, you end up agreeing what the differences are, and you create the shared understanding. So I think the bottom line is shared documentation doesn't mean shared understanding. Yeah, you need conversations. And actually one really big point to remember is this doesn't mean that it's a dysfunctional team. You can have really, really functional teams where they have a good rapport, and you're going to still get misunderstandings if you're not sitting down talking, whether that be face-to-face or remotely. You need to have conversations. So words and pictures help build that shared understanding. So it's not just about talking, it's about using artifacts and pictures and stories and building prototypes, making things. So user story mapping, it helps you achieve a whole bunch of things, yeah? So one thing from Agile, which I talking to other designers, is I find that because it breaks down things quite small, a lot of people don't get to see the big picture. They're so focused on these little chunks of work that they often forget what the bigger thing is they're building. So a story map can help you see the whole picture, the whole holistic sort of view of it. It gives you a roadmap of your future. You know, it shows you where you're going. You can see directions. You can see all the things that you're looking to build or maybe not build, yeah? It also allows you to prioritize things, you know, which is really super important when you're up against budgets or you're validating things. And it also allows you to highlight a lot of pain points and see opportunities for maybe further research or design opportunities. One thing I haven't added on here is it also allows you to build a backlog for your development team. Now, Jeff Patton in his book, he's an agile guy, and he, from that development background, he calls it user stories, because when you make them, you're supposed to make user stories, which then allows you to make a backlog. Yeah. So this is one that I've worked on with the tax tribunals. So I'm at Ministry of Justice, and I'm working on a project service for allowing people to go to a tribunal if they've got a problem with a tax case. Now, we had 2 members here who were leaving the team, and I had about a very, very short window of time. I just started, and I needed to basically absorb a hell of a lot of complexity about tax and the service and so forth. And so we built this, and it was awesome. And this is kind of the structure. You'll see at the top, there's this backbone, there's this sort of main line of the story, the narrative, yeah? And then, has this got one of those funky lasers?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, awesome. Oh, right, excellent. Woohoo! So you got a backbone, that's your narrative. So this is this one up here, that's our big story. And we've got a whole bunch of tasks underneath. These are all the things that people do. And then we've got some buckets we've slipped it into as activities. So let's make one. Woohoo! All right, so it'll be interactive, kind of, I lied. What you need to do is we need to make a backbone. We need to get the big picture. We fill in all the tasks, and then you can explore it, and then you can start to slice it, yeah? So we'll create one. So a morning ritual. The alarm goes off, and you get to work, all right? So I'm gonna use my own example, which is turn the alarm off. I go to the loo, brush my teeth, I get dressed. All right, and then I check my phone. I go downstairs, I check my phone, because, yeah, I check my emails, pack my bag, get my bike. I'm southern, I live south. Anyone else feel the pain of Southern Rail? Oh. So I'm back on my bicycle, which is great. Say goodbye to the family, start cycling, get to work. All right, that's my backbone. Woohoo! So there's, wait, settle down. So here's my backbone, yeah? So that's the kind of my journey, my story. And then I've filled out all the tasks. So I'm filling out all the big pictures. What are all the things under all these
that I want to build. So, you know, I go to the loo, I wash my face, I brush my teeth. It's been cold, so I added all my extra bits on and check my phone. I'm a Clash of Clans player, so I have to check my Clash of Clans. Anyway, so you get the idea, all right? So then I add all the top level activities at the top, you know, so getting clean, dressing, preparation, commute. I've made a story map, right? That is as easy as it can be. So you can apply. Sorry, what going on?
Where's coffee?
Yeah, it's breakfast. Yeah, I was wondering.
All right. Well, I'm glad you asked. So shall I just?
No. That's the thing. That's why.
Okay.
That's why I came.
Oh, okay. No worries.
It
Thank you.
needs to be here.
All right. I shouldn't. Yeah. No worries. No worries. Cheers, mate. Thank you. All right. So there you go. Just to illustrate the point once again. But today, because I'm a bit of a sweaty guy, and when I cycle, I decided to take the train. So I'm adding a different lens here. Now, one thing I did mention before I set this up. So if you're designing a service or a product, or you're doing any sort of design for something, what do you usually have before? You'll have some research, you'll have a value proposition. What is the goal of the business? What are we doing? What is the thing we're making? Why are we making it? So you'll have a whole bunch of research, you'll have, which you can have on the wall. So this is our purpose, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to achieve. Ideally, you should have some user research around who the people are you're building this thing for, internally or external people. And then also, if you don't, you should have some hypotheses about them. Maybe you should have some proto-personas or pen portraits. Yeah, so you should have an idea who this is. So this is one persona. This is me. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. This is me cycling. That is one persona. Yeah. Today, my new persona is, I don't want to come here sweaty, so I'm catching the train. So, I do a little slice, and then I can map the same journey. So what I did was I moved all the cycling stuff down, and then I put all my other things. So, you know, I'll have a shower, because I shower at work. I'm lucky we've got a shower at work, so I don't bother to shower in the morning. So I'll have a shower at work. My dressing is different. I put my work clothes on when I'm catching the train, but when I'm cycling, I'm doing all these different tasks. Yeah. That's the same. Oh, but when I pack my bag, I just take my computer and all. But when I'm cycling, I got my bike gear and I got my showering bits because I'm getting dressed at work. So you can see you can start to slice this. There's real power. So if you've got different users for your product or your service, you can start to slice it and look where the differences are, and you can expand it that way and and it doesn't matter if there's gaps, you know, obviously here, I don't need my bike this day. I'm catching the train. But when I get here, I'm using public transport. So there's a bus or train, I should have Oyster card down here, is it topped up? So what are all the tasks that I need to do when I'm catching the train or whatever? Is probably make sure I swear on Twitter to Southern or whoever. So, yeah. So, yeah. So thinking, so that's the kind of metaphor. If you're thinking about the products and things you make, you've got your backbone, you've got all your tasks, you can start to slice it. So if you imagine you're making your product and your account manager comes in or someone says, right, well, sorry, the budget's been cut. Yeah, we've got to get something out in the next 2 weeks. You've got another sprint. You've got another 2 sprints to get this thing released, okay? So you can start to draw a line and go, okay, what are the most important things that we need to do? So you can start to shift, put lines and go, okay, well, this is a minimal viable product. This is our thing that we need to make to get out the door. And this is our second release, and this is our third release. So you can start to slice things horizontally, yeah? You can also start to slice things vertically as well. You can say, well, okay, from our research and that, we've realized a lot of the pain is in this bit here. Yeah, this is where all the trouble is, so let's focus on that. If we don't have much time or money, we should focus on that bit. Yeah. So again, it's really powerful. But the wonderful thing about it is, so there's some of the team again, is that it's collaborative. So you can do your jazz hands. You get people involved, people are writing post-its, you're having discussions, you're telling a story, it's memorable. You get stakeholders along, they remember it. So in this case, the tax tribunal, it's complex, a lot of nuances around what type of tax it is, when you can apply, when you can't apply. Looking to do some sort of fees, so it's kind of like what's happening there. How do we involve it? So we got stakeholders involved. So the two people were leaving, had a very short amount of time with their knowledge, domain knowledge that they were living with. So within 2 days, I got a really good understanding of the whole journey. And it wasn't just what we were looking to build, it was the end-to-end journey. So a real service approach to the whole thing. What happens before they come to the tribunal? What happens after they come to the tribunal? And then we started to notice that there was a lot of pain before they came to us when they were dealing with HMRC. And I feel very pleased to say our team and that we've managed to make some changes there, which is brilliant. But once we'd done this, we went, okay, well, let's get the business in and sense check this. So we did, we got them in, and we got them to go, well, what's missing here from your point of view? This is what we understand happens at the business level. Is this right? And they're like, oh yeah, no, this is right. Or no, this comes here, and it's posted so you can move things around and it's all good. And then we also started putting on different layers. So from a service map, from a service design mapping, or looking at a journey mapping and stuff like that, you can start to layer on different things like emotions and pain and opportunities. So there's lots of different things you can do. Now, the great thing was that I got that from a design perspective, but for the production team and for the development team, we could then generate, each one of these is like a user story. So then we started writing user stories, which then we noticed where the epic bits of development were going to be. And then we could then put them into a backlog and then start to prioritize and size it and go, well, this is going to take us this long and this is where we need to spend our efforts. So awesome tool. So backbone, create the big picture, explore it, and then go slicing away. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
Can I ask, is there a number of limitations you can slice, or can you slice, do a slice on as many times as you want, if it's required by the department?
Absolutely. The question was, if anyone didn't hear it, it's, I mean, are you limited by this, how many slices you can do? No, I mean, it's up to you. It depends how you want to slice it. I mean, you can slice it by release or by personas, by people. I'm trying to think of some other ways you could slice it, time of the day. I mean, it all depends on what it is you're designing, but there's no limitation whatsoever, no. Yeah.
Hey, sorry, this is actually another question about slicing. You had in your visual slicing vertically,
yeah,
but that seemed to cut through the backbone. So if you removed a slice from the middle, does it still work? Does it not? Do you not miss bits?
I'll go back to that so we've got some context for it. So
is that slide there where you?
Yeah. So
you couldn't deprioritize something from the middle of your backbone, surely, because then it wouldn't work end to end.
So sorry, you're saying you're deprioritizing. So if you go like this, you're deprioritizing these things.
I don't know. It was a question as to would you split if you were building your backlog, for example, and then you get your budget constraint? You couldn't remove a slice that you'd made vertically, could you?
You could, with all means, because I mean, if you're building
your shower, right?
If you're building, well, good. Okay, so using that metaphor, I sleep in. Okay, so I sleep in today. I'm catching the train, so I'm running late. So what am I going to slice out? And
so we just accept that some users will be dirty at work.
Exactly. I won't have a shower, and I'll use more deodorant. Some would say it's a risk. All right, it's all about identifying risks, isn't it? And I like the fact that no one said I washed my hands after the loo as well. It got picked up today when I ran through this. But yeah, so I think it all depends on the thing you're designing for and what you want to. And that's something, again, it's a conversation, isn't it? It's with your product owner, with the development team, the stakeholders, because they'll say, well, if we don't get this slice out, we're going to be late to market. So if we don't release this thing with that, we're fried, you know? So it's those sort of things which are outside of often your control. But when you've got this and you're having those conversations with these people in the room, and I mean, when I was at the Telegraph, it was the first time we used it, and we redesigned the CMS and the whole website, yeah? And we did a story map for the whole CMS side of things. And when you start showing, because, you know, stakeholders are like, yeah, just build it. It's just, yeah, it's always just build it. And then when you show them all the things, they go, oh, right, yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a fair bit of effort in there. So then they start to realize how much development time is. You can do it. Let's just give us more money or people or whatever.
Thank you. That was really good.
Thank you.
So going back to your previous example, how does it deal with optimization? For example, you're checking emails that could be taken from the backbone and repositioned somewhere else, or
yes, yeah, absolutely. So so when you say optimization, what would be the?
So if you go back to the slide where you've got everything on there.
Yeah.
Not trying to optimize your morning routine, but I can see like one vertical slice is check emails. That could be potentially moved to somewhere else on the backbone.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that process of sort of, okay, let's take this from position 6 and move it, combine it with position 10?
Yeah, you could do. I suppose if you're looking at features, I mean, if you're looking in sort of traditional software development and that, you might go, well, actually, we don't want this feature, or you've done a piece of design or research where you go, actually, having this as a standalone thing doesn't work. We want to integrate it with something. So when you've got this, you could actually again go, okay, let's do something on check emails, and you could story map that whole check emails thing where you go, what is the story for that and why are we doing that? So if you're looking to build a new feature like we did with tax tribunals, we mapped out the now, and then what we did was we mapped out the future, which was how do we get a payment tool in here, or how do we add a document upload, and how do we put all the things that we want to put in. So you can look at those existing, I mean, it's up to you. You can make several of them, or you can map them to the same one. There's no real rules to it. Does that kind of
make sense? No, that does. Thank you.
Lovely.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to get the context of the journey and the stuff we work on. I think I'm curious about these forking scenarios. You might take a train or a bike or something else. Yeah. How do you do that without getting too much complexity? I feel that's not like very easy to grasp, like the differences between here. If you imagine you have like 5 different scenarios in here. So how do you keep it visually aligned? What's your best trick for that? Or is there anything?
Good question. I think it's through trial and error. I mean, the fact of, I mean, even just doing this, I was like, oh, what do I do? Do I just push everything down where the common things are? I could just recreate those story maps for each persona, and then you could have different ones. But if there's commonalities, it's nice to show what's shared. So, I mean, you know, this one could be all users in a way, and you know, you could slice what's the minimum that all users need. Sure. And then you could add a new row, which is, this is just when you're biking, and this is just when you're catching train. So yeah, it all depends on how you want to use as a tool and how much wall space you have as well. And just on that, because I go to a lot, you know, I've worked in a lot of places where the modern office is open plan, and please don't put any blue tack on the walls. I'm sure we've all been in those. So these things are really good, whiteboards, because you can always use them. But I was in one place where they got foam board, huge, big foam boards. And it was brilliant, and because they're lightweight, you can carry them around. But they were 7 foot long, and they didn't quite fit in the elevator, and they didn't work too well in the stairwell as well. So it was a bit like, if anyone's read Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, where there's a sofa gets stuck in a stairwell, it was a bit like that. You kind of like negotiate. But the thing is, you can create walls, and you can put these on things. It's good. You need wall space.
Thanks.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's good. Good questions. Thank you very much,
Thanks
Jason.
a lot. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll have a break now. What time do we have to be back here? 5 past. Yeah. So back for 8:05, and yeah, dig in to the bar.
Hi, hello.
So now, next up, Andreas.
Hi, so I'm Andreas. I'm UX consultant at Red Badger. And the topic of the talk is Unstuck My Project. I'm curious to learn what are your toughest problems or challenges at work. And then I would like to invite you to help each other to use your problem-solving superpowers to help each other solve them a bit and get help with your challenge as well. So just, yeah, that's me. Just to get to know you a little bit as well. Who works in agencies or consultancies from you? Yeah, many. Who works on client side? Interesting, yeah, both, perhaps. Who works freelance? Okay. Who studies? Yeah, still, yeah, that's fantastic. I ask you that because we found the toughest challenges for design and tech consultants may not be in design or tech at all. With Red Badger, I work for a consultancy, so I work on client side. And for me, that's the first time. I was used to work in agencies where I was a lot more shielded from the action, but where I had a lot less influence on the final product as well. So that's, for me, that's really exciting. It brings a different kind of challenges as well. And we did a few workshops to discover what are the challenges we have as consultants when we work very close to the product, very close in the client organization, the kinds of conversations we are involved. And from these workshops, we identified 5 groups of challenges. And while you hear them, perhaps you already want to think a little bit, what are your challenges over the last few weeks? What did you have at work, which is you probably would want to try to solve later and probably use the crowd later to crowdsource a good solution for that. So one of the really big challenge we see is goals and definitions are not really clear and the success criteria are really not clearly defined. So at one project, we have a launch of an MVP in a few weeks, and the definition of what's in scope, what's out of scope is still changing. So that's a huge project risk if that's not really clearly defined what it means to deliver successfully. The second one is, you probably know that as well, is unvalidated assumptions being taken as starting points for a project. And the clients are solutionizing. That means, so when it comes to when we think about a product idea, people think, like perhaps from their own experiences or from really things which are not really scientific, they think that's a really, really good idea. We have to go there. And when we get the involvement, sometimes they already kind of have the solution as well. So that's on the bigger picture. And then it's as well, how are the stories written as well? Do they already kind of hand over the solution, just build them? Or do they kind of are properly written from a user perspective and say what they want to achieve and how we do that and how it's kind of related is sometimes it's really hard to find resources for research. It's because it's a budget thing as well. It's sometimes people see it quite far from the product, which makes it sometimes hard to sell. Sometimes it's just organizational things to get into kind of an official testing cycle, things like that. So we think about as well, how can we improve that? Teamwork happens in silos and people are not really collaborating. We find that a lot when we go to bigger organizations, that the knowledge, we have to really dig into very different pots in the organization to find this knowledge. For example, we at one client, we found that the copywriter never met a person who's responsible for compliance. So what, from a legal point of view, the organization is allowed to say, which is really interesting. So that's really one of our jobs as well, to really engage these discussions and bring the people who should work together. Similar to your example of visualizing that and using a workshop format or whatever to bringing people together. And fifth one is ideas don't flow, and there's a resistance to share and discuss early ideas, especially when you're new in an organization and people don't know you, trust you, especially as consultancy. Sometimes there's a bit of difficulty in the beginning to really inspire the trust, to really get people collaborating and sharing early ideas. Things don't have to be super polished, and that's a way of facilitation as well to help with that. So, but now comes the workshopy part, because a lot more interesting is actually what are your toughest challenges at your work, and what would you like to have solved, perhaps? For that, I want you to say hello to your neighbor, whoever sits next to you. If we have rows of three, which is a bit impractical, perhaps, then you just turn around and find someone else. And under your seats, you find stuck story cards. As on any good flight, that's where you find help. And on this card, there are a few questions on there. We have pens as well, if you don't have them. So on there, which we found helps to explore the challenge, really, is to ask people to tell a story. Like it always comes back to that. Tell me a story about the last time. Try to be specific, always in the present or the past. I mean, I guess, you know, that's, you felt stuck on a project. And while that's nice opening up, you have the opportunity to dig deeper at a few places, to ask specifically, what was the hardest? What was so hard about it? Why was it hard? To ask for the root cause. What caused this problem? Perhaps as well, how did your partner try to solve the challenge as well? Because you can see how much effort they put in there, to see how much they want to have a solution. Otherwise, perhaps choose a different product or problem here. And then how is it still a problem? And that's a really good opportunity to dig deeper and say, to run through the others as well. And yeah, what was the problem? Okay, so do you have pens? We have a few as well. And then we start. We have, the time is going quick, so we just can give you 5 minutes to do that, to interview each other and make notes as well. Later, you can share your stuck stories on the wall. Okay. No, that's good. Thanks. Do you have pens? Do you need pens? Do you want a pen? Okay, perfect. Do you want a pen? Okay, perfect. Pens, we're good. Do you have pens? Right, good. Do want pens as well? You don't have sheets? Oh, sorry, I get you one. I didn't realize. Sure, yeah. Do you have sheets? Okay, perfect. Good. That was already 5 minutes. Please try and come to an end. We'll try to continue. Okay. Okay. How did that go? How did that go? Did you find new challenges or? Yeah. Hey, sorry. We have 20 minutes coming nearly to an end, so we just have to wrap up here. But you can continue the conversation after with a drink in the hand, so that's probably even more pleasant. How did that go? Did you find interesting challenges? Did you find challenges that sound familiar or some that you've come across? How did that go?
It was actually quite difficult to actually articulate. It's easy to moan about work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it was difficult to actually articulate.
The specific situation. Yeah.
I think we found that both of us kind of found that what it feels to us that we did the stack
Mm-hmm.
is actually just going through the process of developing. So you don't have the right solution straight away, so you just have to get to it.
Sure.
And while you're on the way, they feel like the stack.
Yeah. That's, yeah. We found when we work on that, we found it really helps to have the problem really clearly defined. That's why I suggest these questions to really dig deep into and clarify the problem space first before we try to get to solutions. So what I'd like to show you here is something we prototype in the studio at the moment. So that's a series of play cards to, that's a clinic format, to play cards for each of the problem areas we spoke about earlier, and a series of blog posts which you write about each of the problem areas. The first one is about better goal setting, and the second one about challenging assumptions at project kickoff. And you can find them on the blog, and just look for my name or just look for our Red Badger blog. You will find them. And before we wrap up, I want to invite you to hang your stories, your stuck stories here on the stuck story wall. Perhaps you find challenges that you had as well, and just to use the crowd as well. It's such a great opportunity while you're all here to see what are shared pains as well, or perhaps you find solutions to problems here together. Perhaps you just have a chat with continue to chat with your neighbor that I had to rudely interrupt. Yeah, thank you very much. If you have any questions as well, or if you want to catch up afterwards, just catch me as well.
Yes, so obviously this is like a super condensed like version of like how you might go about solving some of these issues and problems. So like, how long have you typically taken to go through a process like this in reality, like not in this kind of meetup, very condensed setup?
With clients, you mean, or in
with teams?
With teams. I've done it for 90 minutes because I felt it's really important to clearly define the problem first, and then we use these play cards, which you can see if you're here, which we have little stacks for each of these challenge areas, and they are still evolving. So there are loads of new answers coming to them that people can help each other to coach each other. But I feel it takes a lot of time to really get the problem super crisp, because without that, it's really hard to find a really good solution. And then these play cards, we try to keep them quite, we use the format of play cards to unstuck the situation, really to give you room to move again, because you're like, sometimes it's really like when you see the body language of people who feel stuck, it's a bit like to get movement area as well. So it's something playful and light. And they're just like little inspirations or provocations or questions perhaps to think about, so they don't prescribe any solutions, just like to activate your thinking again and perhaps think about something in a different way. So that needs some time. 90 minutes for a session is perhaps then even just for one topic, really, to explore that with the team better. Depends how different the problems in the room are. If it's one team that works together, perhaps it's relatively aligned, the core problems people have. If it's a quite diverse group, it's really, that's why I think this pairing in two works quite well in such situations too, that you can be quite individual and just talk about your problems.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you just use this with internal teams, or is this sort of used for business for finding if a product is stuck, or maybe it hasn't had traction with users or on the marketplace?
Yeah, at the moment we just start to use it or prototype it even just internally, because we are all in the similar situation that we work in this consultancy situation, and we are sometimes, when we have a design background, we are now exposed to very different kinds of problems. And we're all in the same situation, so we try to find answers to these things. So that's our quest for finding these answers, kind of what we share, and do like some tools to help others as well. So it's very much like second iteration kind of, which we do internally at the moment and share with you, and you can participate. So that's how we share. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Okay, cool. Yeah, so once we're like, definitely encourage everyone to like stick their stuff up on the wall and have a chance to like talk about it. Thank you for sharing that. That's cool. That's like exclusive, right? Did you say that's the second
time? Yeah.
Second time, yeah. So yeah, so obviously like when do we actually, when does this place shut? 9:30? Thanks everybody for coming to our inaugural meetup. Feels like we've hopefully started something pretty cool. Like we weren't expecting to have like full house, so thanks a lot. Keep your eyes out for the next one. Like I said, if you're interested in talking at one, also get in touch. Anyone that you've spoken here today, would be more than happy to hear from everyone. So yeah, get drinking and get sticking.